Welcome everyone to today's webinar, our Advocacy and Action series, The Power of Proclamation. So I'm excited to introduce our amazing speaker. So I'll introduce myself first. My name is Andrew Palomo. I go by he, him pronouns. I'm the Director of Community Strategies here at the National Network. So next slide, please. I'm the Director of Community Strategies. I work with a lot of you all on the ground level, really trying to focus on solutions to ending youth and young adult homelessness. This webinar, that Advocacy and Action, is part of that, right? How do we build that consensus? How do we build that advocacy and let people know that this is an issue? This is something we should be really focusing on, and we will be going over this tool of proclamations, how you can get your own proclamation for your own community, either at the local, state, and possibly even federal level, right? So with that, we have two amazing speakers, Katie Van Grohl, who's from the Boys and Girls Club of Fox Valley, which is up in Wisconsin. And they are the home-based director, and they operate a basic sorry, Katie, if I completely messed up my notes, but I think a basic center program. And they do have an outreach component, and they serve young people who are experiencing homelessness in the Wisconsin area. And then we have Heather, who is our policy associate. So many of you have gotten to meet her. She's probably been on calls. If you're on our PAC, you could definitely have met her there, our policy advisory committee. And Heather has a wealth of experience of grassroots advocacy and some campaigning. So all of this, all of her expertise is something that we're going to be using in order to really start this movement and really trying to get people, bring awareness to people that youth and young adults experiencing homelessness is an issue that needs to be advocated for. So with that, next slide. Just a quick review of our agenda. We did the introductions. We're going to go over what is a proclamation, how to request one, and really listening from Katie, who is a runaway and homeless youth service provider, how they've done it, how they've used it, their experience in getting one, etc. And then hopefully you all on the call will be able to get your proclamations in time for National Runaway and Prevention Month. So a little quiz in the chat for those of you who are on. When is National Runaway Prevention Month? You could just quickly type that in the chat. Let's see. Yeah, yes, Emily, very good. November. So November is Runaway and Homeless Youth Prevention Month. So this is a good opportunity to get that movement, get those proclamations, bring the awareness. And with awareness, right, hopefully that means that more people will give and more people will be able to say, hey, that we want to fund this. We want to end youth and young adult homelessness. How can we do it? Either monetarily, volunteering, all of that stuff. So that is just something to be aware of. And I think with that, I'll turn it over to Heather, who is our in-house expert on proclamation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. Too kind. Great to see everyone here today. My name is Heather. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the policy associate with the National Network for Youth. Can we move to the next slide, please? Awesome. So just to start off, let's talk about a little bit about what a proclamation is. So a proclamation is an official designation within a city, state, or county. Like Andrew mentioned, it could even be at the federal level. And its purpose is to raise awareness on a certain day or month. In our purposes today, as Andrew mentioned, we'll be talking about National Runaway Prevention Month in November. Thank you, Emily, who shouted that out in the chat. And it's to observe an initiative or an issue. The National Network for Youth has successfully requested and gotten many proclamations introduced at the federal level, in honor of National Runaway Prevention Month, and also just other months to raise awareness about the issue of youth homelessness. If you can read and write what the picture on your right says, many more points for you, but that's just a picture, an example of a proclamation that we have gotten issued in the past. And we can move to the next slide. So why should you take the time to request a proclamation? Requesting a proclamation is just a formal way to have a public official recognize or commemorate an event, a cause, or an achievement. Like Andrew had mentioned, we are specifically focused on raising awareness on the issue of youth and young adult homelessness. While proclamations are not legally binding, they're really a great opportunity to educate the public on an issue and raise awareness on that issue. Proclamation signings, which typically happen once a proclamation has been issued, are great photo opportunities that grab the attention of the public and the media. And with these events, you can garner more support. You can garner more support from the public. And once you get some public buy-in on an issue, you're just more likely to, convince public officials then to take the next step after a proclamation to act on the issue. And we can move to the next slide. Awesome. So that being said, there are different styles of proclamations. The two primary styles that we'll focus on today are traditional proclamations and modern proclamations. Traditional proclamations begins with a series of statements starting with the words there, whereas. These are, I would say, the most common proclamations. This is what I've most frequently seen. And myself, in my experience requesting proclamations, this is the format that I have used. You're going to want to check with the official that you're working with to see what their preference is. But I would say today we'll focus on traditional proclamations. That being said, there are modern proclamations, which are written in more of a letter format. They highlight the same points as traditional proclamations, but are typically written as statements. And just so you know, we will be providing you with a sample proclamation text today, and that will be written in the traditional proclamation style. And we can go ahead and move to the next. Oh, thank you so much. Andrew's dropped it in the chat. So who can issue a proclamation? A governor, a mayor, a state legislator, a town manager, a city council member. And part of the strategy of requesting a proclamation does include who you're going to target to ask to issue your proclamation. So you really want to think about, in terms of where you're located, what would make the most sense. And, who do you want in terms of a public official in your community to help be the voice to raise awareness on the issue that you're trying to raise awareness. Only something to think about before you request a proclamation. And the process is going to look a little bit different depending on who you're asking and, where you're located. That being said, when to request a proclamation, different officials are going to want you to request the proclamation on a different timeline. So for some states, mayors and town managers will ask ask you to request a proxy, say a few months or 6 weeks. And some will even request you to submit the proclamation within like 2 weeks. And we can just go on to the next slide. I'm sorry if I'm cutting out a little bit. You know, tech issues are never fun, but thanks for bearing with me. So how to request a proclamation. So once you've decided who you are going to be requesting from, you're going to reach out and make that request. So for governors and state legislatures, many websites will have a designated proclamation section with instructions. For smaller municipalities like mayors or town managers, you might need to call or email their office for instructions. And when you're reaching out, you should really frame why you care about the issue that you're asking them to issue a proclamation for. And, you know, you can include data in that. You can include some background. For example, November is National Runaway Prevention Month. So that can be a part of, you know, we're asking you to issue this proclamation for November because it is National Runaway Prevention Month. We're trying to raise awareness of the issue of youth homelessness in America, and we would love for your office to be a part of that campaign to raise awareness. And we can go to the next slide. So I would recommend when reaching out to request a proclamation that you include the text of the proclamation in your email. This will just make the process go a lot quicker. And also that way the official knows exactly what you're asking, the official and their office know exactly what you're asking them to put out there. And that way from that initial email, you can move on to, you know, if they want to workshop the proclamation language a little bit, if they want to edit it, if they have any questions about the language you've used, you can move on from there. Like I said, this is just a way to streamline the process a little bit. And if you don't receive a response right away, don't worry. You know, sometimes this process can take a little while. That's why we do recommend requesting, you know, a month or even a few months ahead of the time that you're hoping to have the proclamation issued. So if you do plan to request for National Runaway Prevention Month in November, which we hope that you will consider doing, you still have time. You have plenty of time, and we are going to make sure that you have all the tools that you need to request that proclamation. And we can move ahead to the next slide. Awesome. And I'm going to go ahead and kick it back to Andrew.
Thank you, Heather. So those sample proclamations, right, are there. So those of you who just entered the webinar, I'm going to put in the chat again. So if you go to that resource page, and shout out to Eddie, who is our admin person for putting this together, you'll have access to the slides and also those sample proclamations, right? So this is a very standard way of doing the proclamations, and just filling it in. So hopefully that, like, as you're looking through these proclamations, like, you're able to just put in what your community, the specific of your community. Identifying the day of the month is usually the first thing, right? Like, so National Runaway Prevention Month, right, is in November, but it could be anything. It could be about like the grand opening of your drop-in center, of your basic center, right? Like, there's so many other things that you can use this for. So we're really pushing for November, just because we want to bring that awareness. It's been over 50 years as a runaway and homeless youth act. We want to continue that. We want to continue that momentum. We want people to know. We know that the average American is really concerned about about ending youth homelessness. They want that. There was an IPSOS poll done back in 2017 with us, with the National Network for Youth, and the majority of people really had strong feelings about ending youth and young adult homelessness. Right, so we know the need is the urge is there, but I'm not sure if the awareness is right. And many of you on this call are know that, right? Like know that like people only think it's panhandling or something else. But how do we then like change that? Identifying the need, right? Like really focusing on the data. If your community has local data, right? Like if you've done a youth count, or if your McKinney-Vento liaisons in the school district have numbers of how many unaccompanied young people are in your community, that's important, right? Because that's what we need to bring awareness about. And specifically, since like when I talk to my neighbors and I tell them what I do, they have no clue. They're like, "What? There's young people who are just like out surfing and don't have a stable place to live." And I'm like, "Yes, that's actually the most common form of youth and young adult homelessness that we see, right?" And I think that is again, I think this is an opportunity for us to bring that up. Then writing that core statement and right, like whereas, and you can whereas, like you can throw in your organization, right? Like throw in like whereas um, the Boys and Girls Club of Fox Valley, who's been working on this issue for 50 plus years, right? And just um, keep adding this, because I think it does like help bring awareness and then being able to showcase that. Um, and then again, just reiterating the what, when, and where, and how. And these is just a standard way of doing those. And again, like feel free to use those samples that we have present on that website. Feel free to like take anything from this webinar. And then also reach out, right? Like I think we're here. I know Heather and I are at your disposal. And especially just a quick reminder for those of you who are members, if your organization is a member, you do get a certain number of PA hours, right, for being a member. So if you need any assistance in this, Heather and I are here. Just don't overwhelm us, because we are just two people. But next slide. Yeah. And I think like there's a lot of things like when we do these proclamations, like right, like what should we think about, right? Like, yes, getting the proclamation is important, but like there's also event planning. Like, where are we doing it? Who should be there, right? Like, because you want to bring up that awareness. So it does take some time, right? I think like getting the proclamation itself isn't really the hard part, right? Like, I think it really is the event planning. We're doing, if anyone's from Pennsylvania, if you're from Pennsylvania, put your, put it in the chat that you're from PA. But we do have like an event happening in PA. Yes. Okay, so we do have someone from PA. So November 15th, we're having an event, and you know, we're trying to coordinate local state representatives. We're trying to coordinate people to come to Harrisburg. We did get the rotunda. So for those of you who have not been to Harrisburg, or the state capital in Pennsylvania, it's a beautiful venue. The rotunda is like ornate, right? Like, and so we're hoping to get um, a lot of people to attend, right? Like, so if oh, of course, Jada, you're from Pennsylvania. Um, so yes, Jada, yeah, I think you already committed to it. You already said yes that you wanted to be part of the legislative committee. So yes, being able to be there and bring up that awareness is something. But we're all that planning, like we're coordinating with multiple local representatives, we're coordinating with like media, we're coordinating with providers, and all that event planning. It's actually like, correct me if I'm wrong, Heather, it's been like a good like by November, it's going to be like a good 4 to 5 months of solid planning, of like coordination of various entities. So securing the location, finding speakers, make sure they're
Yeah.
getting to the location. Yeah, go for it.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah, I think it should be a great event and we would love to have you all there. So yeah, just echoing what Andrew is saying. It's gonna be a lot of months of planning in the making. So we would love to have you all join us.
Yeah, and I think the other thing really is like getting printed materials, all this stuff. The planning and the behind the scenes is actually like when the proclamation, that's really the work, right? Like, so next slide, please. And of course, I know we've said this a few times already. November, National Runaway Prevention Month, right? It is a public awareness campaign. Our colleagues at the National Runaway Safe Line, right? Like they are the ones who you probably have received email from them if you are a Runaway and Homeless Youth Act recipient. Like um, if you do get that grant, you probably have received emails from them, right? Like, and if you do not get emails from them, they're an amazing resource, 1-800-RUNAWAY. They have a chat, a feature that can help young people navigate this complex system. So really trying to bring a national attention to what's going on. But something that we're really stressing for our members and for you all on the call is that, yes, there's a national scope, but then there's also a local scope, right? And that's where you all come into play, right? That's where you're bringing that local perspective to the issue, because it's so easy to say that this is not our issue. This is an issue that happens in Los Angeles or some of the major cities, but like it doesn't happen in my neighborhood. And we know that's false, right? We know from research that is a false narrative. That what we actually have found out through research and the Chapin Hall Youth Count study showed that youth homelessness rates are nearly the same in urban and rural areas, right? So we know the rates are there are nearly the same. Um, the number of young people experiencing homelessness are larger in urban areas, but that's because of just population density, right? Not necessarily the rates, right? And the rates are nearly the same. So being able to like bring awareness of that it is happening in our backyards and it is happening there. I live in suburban Chicago, and like, and it's interesting when I talk to my neighbors and I'm like, they're like, no, it doesn't exist here. I'm like, yes. And then I'll show them the numbers that are reported from the school district. I was like, they reported 800 homeless students last year, right? Like that's 800 in our neighborhood. So that's it, like, you can't tell me it doesn't exist. Like there are social workers that are helping that. And that's always been like my big thing is that like, I think for us, like sometimes we're a little bit too modest as or humble as a group, like right, like, but no, we need to showcase the great work that we're doing. We need to showcase like that this is an issue that and that it is solvable. That it is like if we everyone in the community can get together, right? And then also stressing that November. That's there's going to be lots of people talking about it in November, so hopefully we can bring up that awareness. Next, I'll get off my soapbox. Heather, you just need to, Heather and Katie, you both just need to be like, Andrew, oh, and move on. So with that, I'm going to introduce our amazing colleague, Katie, up in Wisconsin, not too far from me. But their amazing work and what they've done and some of the best practices that they've used in order to get proclamations up in well, I don't know. Here in Chicagoland, we call it the Cheddar Curtain, right? Like for those of you who are not from the Chicagoland area, that's what they're known for, and their cheese up in Wisconsin, amazing. But that's what we use here. So my colleague up on the other side of that cheddar curtain, I will toss it off to you.
Thanks, Andrew. I have not heard it called the cheddar curtain, but I suppose we aren't supposed to know that's what you call it. So
That's interesting because I've heard it. Okay, because I'm a transplant to the Chicagoland area, so I just moved here like 4 years ago. but they use it in the news, like our local Chicago news, and they're like, yeah, the cheddar curtain. And I guess I think maybe you're right. Maybe it is just, you're not supposed to know. Whoa.
I won't tell that you let me know. Okay, well, I was just going to talk a little bit about our experience with getting proclamations here, and kind of how we decided on that as a process. I can't take credit for that. It was my staff that determined that was a right time for us to do it. We were kind of in a unique scenario of being ready to bring our awareness efforts to a new level and trying to be more intentional about what we were doing and how we were doing it. But we also found ourselves in the throes of 2020 and the time that shall not be named, where we weren't able to do any level of public gathering or community events. And so we had to get creative in how we created our awareness campaign and take everything entirely virtual. And so part of our idea was to get some local support in different places that we could add on to our November awareness webpage. And so that sort of led one of my staff to say, hey, the mayor's office is having some open office hours. I'm going to drop in. And that's where it started, was at a drop in with the mayor's open office hours, where we just sort of talked about what would it mean, what would it look like, and how would we do it, which kind of led us to how we drafted it. We had no idea at the time that we would be writing it ourselves. We thought we just went to them and then they put it together and we were like, cool, thanks for the support. But that's not how it went. So it was a little intimidating at first, but like Heather said, drafting it is actually the easy part, because this is what we do and this is what we're passionate about, and we know that. And so it just comes to putting it into their format and how they prefer to present it. And so we sat down and thought about what do we want people to know about it, and how do we reduce the stigma around it? And then why do we want them to know about it? And that's really the process that we followed. So very similar to some of the material that you saw in the example earlier is kind of the information that we included. And then we summed it up by just sort of asking the community to notice. One of the big things of our campaign is green footprints around the safety organizations and places in the community that would support this population. So we ask our community to recognize those green footprints and become a part of seeing these young people that need our help and a part of the solution. So that's how we wrapped it up. Like I said, we decided on the mayor because we found he had open office hours, but it seemed to make the most sense to reach out to an official that was in one of our larger service areas. We serve several counties, but we chose our first proclamation to be through that largest city that we serve. And he has done one every year since then. So we continue to go back to him. We don't hold a signing event so much as the culmination of our awareness leads to a community wellness fair to bring community members into all of the resources. And the mayor will open our wellness fair every year by reading the proclamation and presenting it to a member of our staff. We like to try and push that off on leadership so we don't have to be up in the front receiving it. But you'll see here that our CEO received it last year for us. And then we enjoy taking our pictures with the mayor, who then participates in our wellness event. So now not only do we have his support, but he's out connecting with our community members that are attending, and he's connecting with our agencies, and he's showing his investment in continuing to work through this issue. So you kind of get a lot more out of the proclamation than you go into it with thinking that is going to come out of it. For us, I think we feel like we got the desired impact. We got what we were looking for. It created some awareness and increased support, but it also brought a lot of opportunity for community collaboration on a lot of different levels. We have teens that come to our wellness fair because they think it's awesome to see the mayor. And then now you have the mayor talking about issues that affect them. And so you create a different level of connection there between elected officials and youth. We have a lot of partnership opportunities, a lot of agencies that work out referral systems and how to share clients and how to best serve. And it creates a lot of opportunity just through this piece of paper. So I do have somewhere on this call, I have my assistant director as well, in case anybody has any more direct questions about what our process might have looked like. She really takes the lead in doing this. We kind of recycle our wording every year because we're still supporting the same issue. We're still wanting people to learn the same things and reduce the same stigma and be aware of the same issue. So we don't often change the wording, but it's nice to have the mayor continually in person delivering every year in November, reminding us that this is still something we're supporting. And we have had some different levels of communication and collaboration with the city as well in other areas of our programming that sort of stemmed from our beginning to get their support and allow them insight into what it was that we did. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or thoughts or anything that we can help with as you think about what it is that you guys want to do for your awareness campaign. My assistant director can speak more to the timeline of what we needed and how we do that. I know that each year we learn a little bit more about our event and our campaign, and we start planning a little bit earlier. But I think the timeline for our proclamation stands pretty much the same each time.
No, thank you, Katie. I think some of the things that you've discussed, right? Like, I think like when I like was listening to some of the best practices, you've said a lot of local officials do have like office hours and drop-in times, right? Like I know that like my local congressional representative, right? Like he holds like these open like drop-in times with his staff, and like because I get the mailer, right? Like I usually ignore them, right? Like, but I'm like, no, like we should be using it. We should be using this time, and like, right, like mayors, city councils, and right, like if that opportunity comes, and like it's just like it's a quick ask, and I think like for especially in local elections, right? Like I think that political health, right, like of that person, right? Like these are elections that are won by like a few hundreds of votes, and in some instances it's even smaller, right? Like so I often think that like specifically in the local realm, it's like, yeah, I mean, like, yes, you're not supporting young people experiencing homelessness, right? Like, and sometimes I use a different word, right? Like I'll say, yeah, they're under 18, they're children. So you don't want to support children who are homeless, right? Like sometimes
Right.
it's that guilt, right? So it's just something, I don't know. Yes.
Yeah.
You were about to say something. Yeah.
No, I was agreeing with you. Everything you're saying, I agree with you. I do see that there was a question in the chat about increasing awareness and how important that is, but wondering what policy change proclamations might be able to lead to. And I can speak a little bit to that on the Wisconsin state level. I know that we are lucky in Wisconsin where we have an association that joins together all of our runaway and homeless services across the state, and we all work together as a group. And we have been able to, in the past, bring about some policy change that will allow us to house runaway or homeless 17-year-olds in adult shelters. So that is a very recent policy change. I think in 2019 is when that came around. And we're now working on trying to change some of the policies related to timelines where our state guidelines don't agree with our federal guidelines on the timeline that parent and guardian need to be alerted to a youth in a shelter. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit, Phoebe, but there's a lot that goes into that policy advocacy, and having some of that support of our local officers and mayors and council members and things of that nature can help us when we bring it up to that higher state level.
And going along that, I have also seen some things that are very similar where like it is to bring awareness, but then also support for bills. Like our November 15th event in the state capital of Pennsylvania, there are 3 bills, right? So these three bills were developed because a group of providers came together trying to build awareness, trying to get these proclamations, and then getting support from these congressional or state legislators. Sorry, not congressional. So these state legislators in Pennsylvania to be able to then support young people experiencing homelessness. And then we provided some technical assistance. I know Heather is knee deep in the Pennsylvania Legislative Subcommittee, but trying to figure out like hey, what is the low hanging fruit, so that way we can get some of the movement, so we can get more young people housed, right? Like, so that is like, I do want to say that this has been like in Pennsylvania, we've been working on the ground level in PA now. I think it was right before the pandemic. So, oh wait, I was not supposed to say that word. Katie said, don't say it. But right before what we should not be speak of the before times. Um, so it's been what, like God, it's been like 4 years, right? Like, so, yeah. So we've been working on with them for 4 years. So it is I just like, you probably have heard this so many times, that policy change is slow, right? Like, um, and so it's like little incremental steps, but it can happen, right? It can happen. Getting that support, and getting that cross sector support, right? Like, I think is crucial. But how proclamations can be that, it can be that catapult, right? It can be that catalyst to bring that support together, right? Specifically, if you're like bringing awareness and holding people accountable, right? I think that is right. Like, that's something to like, yes, we can hold people accountable, right? Like, I think that is um, just a kind of uh word of caution, right? Like, I think, like, yes, like holding accountable, and it's that balancing act between accountability and getting what you want. But those are things that's strategy, right? And again, if you remember, that's where Heather and I can come in and help you figure out that strategy of like how to best tackle issues. And in certain communities, like holding people accountable is better than in other places. So I have yes, I have tried to hold people accountable. That's a whole different webinar about holding political people accountable. Jada and I in Philadelphia have had multiple conversations about that. I owe Jada dinner so we can continue our how are we going to solve things in the southeast of PA. But yes, I will end my rant. Oh no. Eddie, are you able to go to the next slide? I no longer see the errors. So we have you're welcome, Phoebe. So we have a few questions. They will come up in a poll. Whenever we're ready to launch them. And I say the word Eddie all the time because he, again, just shout out to Eddie. He is our behind the scenes person, our amazing admin associate. So just wanted to give a shout out again, because this webinar would be a disaster without him. So just wanted to, there's a poll. There's 3 questions that should pop up. Like, have you made a proclamation in the past? Yes, no. Are you planning on doing one this year? Yes, no. And then the third one is for our members only. Do you want TA on getting it should be your proclamation, but so if you want that TA, like, let us know, and we will reach out, or you can reach out to us about getting that. So I'll give a minute or two. Hopefully you're able to get the poll questions. Then we'll review them. All right, Eddie, not sure if you can put the result on in the chat. Oh, then just hit no. You don't, the last question. It should be there we go. Wow, like a third of you all on this call have had a proclamation in the past. And half of you would like technical assistance. So for those of you, we'll definitely reach out. And are you planning on doing a proclamation this year? The majority of you say yes. So hopefully that is something that oh, no worries about the poll, Connie. You can email us regarding that. So it's exciting to see that people are interested in getting that proclamation out. If you can go to the next slide, Eddie, thank you. Again, like we have that website that if you want to try it on your own, I just put the website again in the chat. There are the resources there. This webinar at the end of this, or give us a week time, but this webinar will also be placed on that proclamation resource center, so that way you have access to the slides, have access to the webinar, have access to the toolkit, and then the sample proclamations, and you can like just fill it in on your own. So those are all going to be available to you on that website. Feel free to share it with your colleagues, because we're really here. We really want to share this resource so people can have the ability to bring up this awareness. Next slide, please. This is just another area now that you have that resource. We also have that take action page. We are the federal take action page. I know Heather can talk more about this, about like appropriations and like how appropriations, like how the Congress like doles out money and like figures out like which programs are going to get more money or less money. So feel free to take action. Heather, I don't know if you want to give a quick shout out on about our take action page.
Yeah, so I would just love to plug our Take Action page. It's a great space to find ways to influence your elected officials to, actually enact policy change. To Phoebe's point, so proclamations, you can think of them as that first step of a tool in your toolbox for advocacy, building a relationship with an elected official, getting them to go on the record in their support of ending youth and young adult homelessness. But yeah, the rubber meets the road at policy change, right? That's what we all want to see. We want to see elected officials acting in a way that the proclamation and what they say their values are, what our values are, ending youth and young adult homelessness, into a way that we can actually make change happen. So yeah, on our take action section, there are sample emails that you can send to your elected officials. There's information that you can use to write testimony about bills that you'd like to see passed. There's a section where you can find your legislators. So yeah, just a ton of good information for you to take action.
Next page. Yeah, and also just want to plug in our consulting work. That's what I do. So helping people get proclamations, get it, like what Phoebe said, like how do we hold people accountable? We work with youth action boards. We work with like stakeholders in the community. We do a lot of different things, from like policy advocacy strategy to like how to use data, right? Like in order to make informed decisions. That's a big one that I'm working on with one community now, because they use HMIS data only. And I was like, no, there's so much other data out there that we can tap in order to get a bigger scope of, or a bigger picture of what youth and young adult homelessness looks like, from using the YRBS, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, to using McKinney-Vento data, right? Like, and how do communities use data, and getting those cross-system collaborators together in order to really like focus on this issue, that it's not just what HUD says is homelessness, right? Like it's much more complex than that. We know the research says that, right? So helping communities do that. We also help with community needs assessment. So plugging in our consulting work. So for those of you who are members, you get 2 hours of free consulting services as a member, and then 25% discount per hour if you are there. So just plugging in, this is my my sales pitch. Please keep me employed. And next page. Yeah. So I'm gonna leave it here. So feel free. We still have Katie and her awesome staff on the line. So if anyone has questions, any further questions, feel free to stay and ask them. And if not, can't wait to see how all of your proclamations turn out. And Jada, if you're still on, I'm gonna text you. I owe you I owe you a call. I'm just slacking. Oh, I know. Jada says it's fine, but that's because she knows being a parent to a 1-year-old is just crazy. I get nothing done. Who wants a 1-year-old? Just kidding. Oh no, this is recorded. When she's older, she's gonna see this and like be like, "What? You tried to give me up on a webinar?"
You know what, Andrew? They tell you when they hit school age that it gets easier, and in some ways it does, but I think we get busier because their needs change. They just wait till they get to school, you'll have more time. I disagree. I disagree.
No, I mean, but I go back to my like when I was in middle school and high school, and I just like I was highly involved. Like I played soccer and I did this and I did that, and I'm like, I don't know how my parents like survived. I'm like, because they were driving me everywhere, so I'm just like,
Yep. Yeah, I agree. One of my children does the same sport that I did, and I have a whole new appreciation for my parents.
All right, so it seems like there's no questions, and thank you all. If there is a question, this is your last chance. Oh yeah, for college, it's a whole different level of need. Yeah, I was needy in college too. Yeah, thank you, Christine. So if anyone, if you want to unmute yourself and ask that last burning question you have, if not, we will be calling it a day. All right, no one's unmuting themselves. All right, thank you all. Katie, again, thank you so much. A pleasure. Thank you for all the great work you do. Heather, thank you for being amazing and getting all of this done. And then Eddie, again, the behind the scenes, us being a fully remote team, we wouldn't be able to function without you. So thank you. All right, take care, everyone.